Good morning. Thank you for coming. So, we're going to talk about a topic that I care about very much. Actually, a few of them. First, cybersecurity. Something that I want to say going into this is that for some people in the room, this is going to be old hat. I mean, you could probably give this lecture yourself. For some people, this is going to be somewhere between black magic and voodoo. The things that we're going to talk about today, we're going to cover some mistakes that have been made by other organizations, and we're going to talk about ways to avoid those mistakes so that we don't have to learn them ourselves. But what I do want to put out there is that nothing in this presentation is supposed to be scary. I'm not here to attempt to frighten you. I'm here to talk about a topic that, honestly, I enjoy probably way too much. But thank you for that introduction. So we'll get right into it. All right. So today's presentation, I'm going to bring it up here so that I'm not constantly leaning around. We got the oversight, but right now I'd like to talk about the weight of an image, why we're actually in this room. I know we've got several nonprofits here. We've got schools. We've got people in the medical profession. We've got people that are here because they want to be here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and why I care about schools and nonprofits. When I moved to Nashville, one of the things that really intrigued me about Crossland & Associates was their emphasis on nonprofits. I personally participate in a nonprofit. It's a disaster response organization, a veteran service organization. I happen to be a veteran, so that's something that I personally care about. But there are so many good things that people do. There are so many good things that the people in this room do. And I wish I could do more with all of your organizations, but I can't because unfortunately there's still only one of me. So the approach that I take is that not all of us can be superheroes, as many of you are, but even Batman needs a mechanic, and so I can do that. So with regard to cybersecurity, this is my way of being Batman's mechanic. So I'd like you to just think about what brings people to your organization. In many instances, it is a reputation. In many instances, it is prestige. It is an image that you have built up that people recognize. In almost all of those instances, that image is developed and is sustained by trust. Trust that people place in your organization, whether they're sending their children to you, whether they're sending their money to you, or whether they're providing their time and resources to you. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about trust. Also, as we're going through this, I'd like you to consider any organizations that you've seen that have lost the trust of their constituents and the impact that that's had on them. First, we're going to start by learning from the mistakes of others. Now, I know this quote has been attributed to a great many people, but I happen to be a fan of Eleanor Roosevelt, so she gets the picture. Learn from the mistakes of others because you can't learn long enough to make them all yourself. That is so true. Okay, we're going to start off with a school district, the Lower Merion School District, which is a suburb of Philadelphia. They implemented technology within their school system. They gave all the students laptops because that would help the students to get their homework done, to do any number of things, and technology is cool. So why wouldn't you do that? It's shiny. One of the things that they did to help protect this investment was to install remote monitoring software. The idea was that if a laptop is stolen, that they could use this software to then find the laptop and return it to the student. However, this remote monitoring software was unfortunately used by some people to take pictures of students using the webcams on the laptops. This resulted in the inevitable lawsuit, and the evidence used against the school in this case were pictures taken of a student in his bedroom. All of you who are right now going, oh my God, what? Yes, that's an appropriate response. That was the first of now 3 lawsuits that the school district is facing. And this is just one of those things that right up until somebody started abusing their privileges on these laptops, that was probably an outstanding idea. Somebody went into this with the best of intentions. I seriously doubt anybody sat down at a board meeting and said, we have this great idea to take pictures of our students. That's just not something that would happen. However, what this does indicate is that there's a need for oversight. Trust is something that must be maintained. You can't simply earn trust, put it in a box, and expect it to stay there. Trust is something that must be maintained, and transparency in an organization is critical in order to do that. The next example we've got, this is something that could have turned out horribly wrong, but it ended up being a learning experience for all involved. In 2011, a Red Cross employee tweeted something that was meant for his personal account. Ryan found 2 more 4-bottle packs of Dogfish Head's Midas Touch beer. When we drink, we do it right. And the hashtag getting slizzard means drinking just a little bit too much. And he actually tweeted that out from the Red Cross Twitter account. Oops. So the response to this was actually, it was well done. Within an hour, of course, the tweet was taken down, and the Red Cross responded with a tweet that said, hey, everybody's sober here. We've taken the car keys away from that guy. Everybody makes mistakes. We deal with catastrophes on a daily basis, and this just isn't that big a thing. Not long after that, Dogfish Beer got into the game, and they started saying, hey, great tweet. By the way, have you donated to the Red Cross recently? Within the day, donations, both blood and money, to the Red Cross had spiked. By that evening, bars had started giving out free beers, free Dogfish beer, to people who could prove that they had donated blood. Nobody was fired, and the organization's image was not damaged. Now, I understand that some of you might not be able to get away with this like the Red Cross did. Certainly, faith-based organizations might have a different perspective on a tweet like this. However, what this does illustrate is the ability to respond quickly, the ability to have a plan in place to deal with things like this. If you have a social media presence, certainly you should have a plan to deal with potential things that could go wrong with a social media presence. The next example we've got, well, actually we've got a lot of them. Data breaches. Okay, this is something that I've dealt with on a unfortunately regular basis. But a few examples that we've got here are Emory University Hospital. They had 10 backup disks go missing. That impacted approximately 315,000 patients. University of Miami Hospital, 2 disgruntled employees sold, they actually didn't sell medical records, they sold backup disks upon which medical records were stored. And as I was just telling this table over here, who were nice enough to let me sit with them this morning, medical records, honestly, those scare me a little bit. Certainly we're in this room to talk about finances and cyber threats, and we understand that in many cases there are rules and controls in place to help deal with threats to our financial information. But if you were to ask me right now, what type of data scares you the most, it would probably be medical records. Just as an example, if I could get a hold of Justin's medical record here, within 15 minutes I could sell it for $350 at an established marketplace. That's just, those marketplaces exist. And if I went to that marketplace and bought Justin's medical record so that I could then pretend to be him and get prescribed medication of some kind, one of the first things that I would do would be to change Justin's blood type to mine so that I didn't get caught when they did the inevitable blood work, which is fine until Justin gets into a car accident and they give him AB negative blood, which is certainly going to be a problem for him. Sorry about the tangent there. Salem State University had a database compromised that impacted 25,000 people. And then Choice Escrow and Land Title versus Bancorp South Bank, Missouri. This is actually, from my perspective, it's one of those really type of stories. So Choice Escrow and Land Title had a relationship with their financial institution. They had a relationship that allowed them to make transfers of money. And their financial institution had 2 options for them. Either you can have a password-protected account that will allow you to authorize a transaction and to request a transaction. Those are 2 different things. or you can have a password-protected account to authorize and a different password-protected account to request the transfer. So the idea there is that best practices say two people should be involved in this. No one person should just be able to say, send all of the money over to someplace else. Choice Escrow and Land Title decided not to do that. They elected for the single account, which was then, of course, compromised. There was non-authorized wire transfer of $440,000. And then Choice Escrow tried to sue their financial institution, and two court decisions said no, that was a bad move on your part. The financial institution certainly had controls in place. You decided not to implement those, and so yeah, sorry about your loss. And then, of course, the data breaches that we're all aware of: Target, Neiman Marcus, Michaels, Home Depot, and P.F. Chang's. The next example I've got is a data breach that involves personal safety. Now, this is something that, honestly, probably 10 years ago, I wouldn't have even thought about a data breach that involved personal safety. The first time my perspective changed was when I attempted to help out at a women's shelter. So a women's shelter in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And it was the holidays, and I don't know about any of you, but I can fry a turkey like you wouldn't believe. And so that's one of the things that I tend to do around the holidays, go to places and make them Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. And so I called up a women's shelter and said, "Hi, my name is Shane. I'd like to come and make food for you, because everybody loves food." And they said, "I'm sorry, no, we just can't do that." And I said, well, why not? What's going on? And the woman on the phone, who was incredibly patient with me, because I was completely ignorant of the fact that at this women's shelter, I was not the first guy to call and say, "Hi, I want to come and volunteer," who might not have had the best intentions. Really? I had no idea. But breaches of confidentiality, certainly breaches that don't even need to involve a computer, can in fact place people's lives at risk. This is something that certainly I was well aware of, having worked in Washington, D.C. for a long time. Working at those federal agencies, if there is a computer breach, people tend to die very quickly. However, working with nonprofits, that was just the first time that I'd seen kind of that perspective from a nonprofit standpoint. This example that I've got for you, however, Mesa County Sheriff's Department, a few years back, a member of their IT staff moved some files to a computer that they didn't realize was accessible from the internet. Those files contain information on confidential informants. Those files contain information on drug investigations. Those files contain information on the home addresses of employees for the Sheriff's Department. That's a big thing. That's not needing to go and get your credit card replaced because Home Depot just sent you an email. There are people whose lives immediately were put in danger there. Also, understand that the sheriff's departments don't work in a vacuum. I know a great many law enforcement agencies and law enforcement personnel. They share information. That's how they get their job done, which means that a breach at one impacts the information that they had received from other agencies. So the message that I'm trying to put out here is that certainly it's not just an IT problem. Certainly it's not just a paperwork problem. There can be, and there are, real effects to breaches of confidential information. Not just impacting your organization's image, but potentially impacting personal safety of the people who place their trust in your organization. All right. Here are a few of the things that we've seen. When dealing with a breach, I can't tell you how many times I've received a call that started with the phrase, "How fast can you get here?" Unfortunately, many of those calls have come at on Monday mornings, which means that somebody has been dealing with this all weekend long, which is a little bit of a problem for me because I prefer untarnished evidence, but starting a phone call with "How fast can you get here?" is, I know what that situation is now. I'm going to get a call, I'm going to respond to an organization, and I'm going to find the president or the CEO, general counsel, and the chief financial officer sitting in a room. The only reason that their priest isn't there is that they've already called them. But they're going to be there, and they're going to say, something bad has happened. Fix it. I'm going to ask if they've got a plan, and they said, our plan was to call you. That's fine. That is absolutely fine. What my goal during that first conversation is going to be is to make sure that everybody has a job. There are people in that room who wield a great deal of authority within that organization, but who are unprepared for this current situation. It's something new, it's something a little bit scary, and they just need a little bit of guidance. Once everybody is on board with the we're a team and we're going to get past this, honestly, things move along very well. But having a plan to that, to deal with that instance is critical in order to be able to deal with it. The second thing is our guys have been working on it. Our IT guys have been working on it. When I go into an organization and they're dealing with an incident, and I'm there to help them deal with an incident, I will continue to come back to the we are a team here. An incident is not something that is simply an IT problem. In fact, there's a clear distinction to be made between information security and IT security. Information security deals with the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your information wherever that may be. I was talking to a construction company not too long ago who said, we're fine. We hardly use computers at all. In fact, they use CBs to talk with the multiple different projects they've got going on in any given city. So they pass information across the CBs that they're sure nobody's listening into. And their foreman or their project managers just write stuff down on pieces of paper. Unfortunately, when they write stuff down on pieces of paper, that's where the information now is. So when the foreman hears that Shane isn't going to be in to work today because he's got some embarrassing medical condition, that gets written down on the piece of paper. That's information. That's information security, and that's a problem. So, yes, IT guys are great. I love them. I am one. But this isn't just an IT problem. You're the expert. You figure it out. I actually heard this once when I was responding to an incident. The chief information officer and his deputy had been responding to an incident for probably 2 days. I would venture to guess they had not slept yet. And by the time I arrived, the finger-pointing game had begun. And so they were very defensive. And they didn't like the fact that the president and general counsel had reached out to an outside organization to come and help deal with this issue. And I'm here to tell you that is easily my biggest problem in dealing with an incident. It's not technology. It is simply it's human nature. People want to know what happened and whose fault was that. There will be plenty of time for that, but dealing with an incident is not the time. And then the final one is I told them something like this might happen, serves them right. That is simply a consequence of the finger pointing that we've encountered. So common themes. Common themes that I've seen, something that we've seen, planning. Planning is huge. Planning for incidents, planning for anything that might affect your organization's image. If you've got a social media presence, certainly that should be discussed. If you've got an internet connection, you should have policies and procedures to deal with acceptable use. If you have college students aren't known for making the best decisions at that stage in their life. Certainly expect that they're going to try and explore and they're going to try and push the rules. I've worked with several colleges and universities, and college students tend to get creative on how they use the resources that they've been presented with. And then responsive. This is where I admit that the gray in my beard is supposed to be there. When I was growing up in the middle of absolutely nowhere, Ohio, we had a sticker on the fridge that said rescue squad this number and fire department this number because 911 wasn't there yet. The response plan for a medical emergency was to call those numbers. And in fact, right now, if I were to fall over in front of you right here, my sincere hope is that nobody pulls out their phone, opens up the WebMD app, and tries to start diagnosing my symptoms. Please call 911. Okay? Find somebody that is trained to deal with whatever my emergency may be, and please get them to me. So having a plan, both preventative and responsive, is important. Policy and oversight, both in-house and third-party. We saw the need for oversight with the school district outside of Philadelphia. They're certainly learning that lesson right now. So that would be in-house policy and oversight. Third-party oversight is equally as important. Is there anybody in the room here who understands exactly how Target was breached? Okay. Target, you were? Okay. Go ahead.
Some subcontractor working for them, and they had accounts set up for them to log into their system, and someone
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
there.
Target didn't get breached. Their HVAC company got breached. Their HVAC company had a virtual private network into Target's networks to control the heating and air conditioning systems. The HVAC company was compromised, and they used that authorized virtual private network to wander straight into Target. That doesn't absolve Target of the responsibility. They had 2 weeks of their system screaming at them, saying, hey, there's a problem here, before somebody actually noticed it. But yeah, Target had defenses in place. Their HVAC company was in fact the problem, which brings us to oversight of third parties. Usually I beat up on municipalities for this because they often involve third parties, especially for facilities and maintenance. And they often run into potentially similar situations with Target, saying, yeah, we've got this company. They come in and they take care of that stuff. And we've known them for years. They're great people. We trust them. Not to sound cynical, but I don't trust a whole lot of separate computer systems. There are people that I trust, but their computers, maybe not. YouTube Academy. I don't know if anybody else has attended YouTube Academy, but I've spent a lot of time on YouTube learning different things. And while there are some instances where I think that's appropriate and wonderful, when you're trying to make the prettiest PowerPoint presentation on the planet, certainly look up YouTube and find some videos on how to do that. If you're responding to an incident, now we're back to the WebMD and I've just fallen out scenario. Appropriate training is important. Having the people there to do their job that have been trained in dealing with an incident is outstanding. Simply being able to speak to a topic, there is no replacement for that. As I told somebody the other day, there are some presentation topics that I will never be speaking on simply because I don't understand those topics. This one, I do. Having a background in information security is important if you're dealing with an incident. And then finally, see no evil, and it's an IT problem. There are more than one chief financial officer in the room here. Understand that, actually, I really enjoy speaking to chief financial officers because you generally understand risk better than most. I don't have to explain what risk is, why it's bad, and how we need to mitigate risk when I'm talking with chief financial officers. Understand that IT folks, and I have been an IT director of a national corporation, so I am speaking with a little bit of authority here. IT folks prioritize things, and you only have a little bit of time to talk when you're giving the weekly status briefings or meetings, and so you try to go with what's most important. Sometimes your perspective is a little bit different than IT's perspective. When talking to the IT staff, communications are more critical than a lot of the organizations that I've spoken with actually understand. Simply because in a number of the organizations I've worked with, IT reports to the chief financial officer. Sometimes there's a chief information officer that's an equal to the CFO, but in many cases, IT reports to the CFO, and there can be a communication breakdown there. And in that breakdown, sometimes important things don't get said. And so I'm going to touch on that again in just a second, but communication is absolutely critical, not just in dealing with an incident and being a team, but avoiding incidents altogether. And then it's an IT problem. We already talked about CBs and writing things down, so we'll move past that. This is a question I always get, so I just put it up on a slide. Cost of a breach. Last year, it was between $2 $200 and $250 per record. So I don't know how many students you have had. Certainly if you are a college or university, a breach of your system would involve current students, current faculty, and all prior students and prior faculty. But the average financial impact of a breach in the United States is about that much. I'm not going to go into the mathematics. Certainly you understand how many records you've been entrusted with. But the 3 stages of consequences for a breach are things that people don't often realize. The initial stage, once a breach is identified, and you would, in the state of Tennessee, certainly have to let people know that there's been a breach. The Tennessee State Privacy and Data Breach Law dictates that you let people know that there's been a breach if you suffer that. It used to be that people couldn't do much about that until their identity had been stolen. As of 2011, the First District Circuit Court set a precedent in a case involving Hannaford versus Customers. Hannaford is a grocery chain up in the Northeast that established that people can preemptively sue if there's been a breach for credit monitoring, which is why when Target was breached, they immediately said, we will cover credit monitoring for 2 years, because otherwise people would have been fully within their rights to sue. Depending upon your organization, there may be a customer or donor exodus. Certainly that's not a big problem if you happen to be a municipality. Most people can't just decide not to pay their taxes. However, if you do rely on donors, that's a problem. So the impact of potential exodus varies largely depending upon the type of organization. Secondary stage, this is the potentially really, really painful stage. Secondary stage is where you get to talk to opposing counsel. If you can show that your organization has conducted due diligence, that being we conduct network scans, we keep all of our systems up to date with antivirus, we do risk assessments, we look for vulnerabilities in our organization, we attempt to protect the information we've been entrusted with, then typically you're going to be dealing with actual damages, which honestly, relatively speaking, those aren't huge. The cost of replacing a credit card is not all that great. However, if you cannot show that you've taken care of somebody's personal information, if you have a data breach and if you lose my information, at some point you're going to be sitting in front of a jury of my peers telling them how after Target and Neiman Marcus and Home Depot and P.F. Chang's and all of those universities that we just talked about, how you still could not be bothered to protect my information, somebody's going to have a problem with that. And punitive costs tend to be much greater than anybody would want them to be outside of the plaintiff. And then tertiary is just as soon as 1 or 2 or more people in each state find out that you lost their information, then expect class action lawsuits. The Tennessee Data Breach Law says that if you have my first name and last name, or my first initial in my last name, in conjunction with my social security number, my driver's license number, a bank account number, a credit card number, and a PIN, and you suffer a breach, you need to report it. You need to let me know. I went and, in addition to working with Crossland and working with a nonprofit, I also occasionally speak at colleges and universities. And when I go there, one of the things that I often ask is, hey, do you guys issue parking passes? And inevitably, yeah, sure, we do, absolutely. And so I'll ask them, what kind of information do they require in order to get a parking pass? And they say, well, we just take a photocopy of a driver's license and an insurance card. That way, we know who got the pass. And I'll say, well, where do you keep that information? And it'll usually be in a receptionist's desk or in a filing cabinet that's not locked. That is legally protected information in the state of Tennessee. Driver's license number, just a photocopy of a driver's license is legally protected information. And it's typically not stored on a computer. So understanding Tennessee data breach laws and your responsibilities for reporting under those laws are relatively important because now we're going back to due diligence. And ignorance certainly is not an excuse when talking to opposing counsel. Okay, so we're past the part that was not supposed to be scary but might have been just a little bit scary. Usually I get asked, okay, so now what do I do? I understand that there are risks. I certainly don't want to be up on one of your slides in a presentation about 2 years from now. Can you tell me how to avoid that? The first step is to assemble the team. We talk about team effort. I know lots of organizations that say, we're a team. We're here to, work hard, play hard. We operate as a team. That needs to be true. It needs to be more than a slogan. When dealing with anything pertaining to information technology or threats to information security, you need to already have that team in place. So typically that team includes someone from a compliance office, if that is applicable to your organization, someone from technology, general counsel, someone from finance, and schools or departments. So if you happen to be a university, a representative from each of your schools should be on this team. If you happen to be a commercial organization, anybody from a representative from each of your departments should also be present. Essentially, we're talking about business owners. Second, you need to understand the risks. This is where you get to talk to all those people, those representatives from each important aspect of your organization, and just say what could go wrong. Okay? Not what should go right. Those are meetings that we love to have. Tell me about all the ways we're going to grow. Tell me about the ways that we're going to absolutely dominate our marketplace. But you need to talk about what could possibly go wrong. Third, establish a starting point. Understand that the first time you do a risk assessment, the first time you do a vulnerability assessment, and the first time you do a penetration test, it is going to be ugly. That is not the time to point fingers. That is the time to say, all right, we've established our starting point. We know we want to get from here to a better place. Next, you measure everything. You say, all right, we've got our starting point. We've got, let's see, an organization that I recently took a look at had well over 200 vulnerabilities. Some of those could be fixed relatively easily. Some of those required architecture. So there are different ways to address vulnerabilities. But the important thing to keep in mind is that everything should be measured. If you can't measure it, then you can't track it. If you can't track it, then it's going to get lost. And then finally, assume nothing. All that means is just to test regularly. Once you've got a starting place, once you're measuring, and once you're testing regularly to show the progress that's being made, the transparency that we talked about earlier, it's just going to happen. You're not going to have to remind people to be transparent. It will already be there. Simply be an inherent part of that process. Paradigm. Honestly, I don't like that word, but it's appropriate. Just because it shows up so many times in PowerPoint presentations, and here I am using it myself. Fire is scary. Fire burns, fire hurts, fire destroys, and it can absolutely ruin a steak. But we all understand fire. We deal with it. That right there is a dry pipe fire extinguisher system, which means that after appropriate heat is detected, we have 10 seconds on average to leave the room before we need an umbrella. Okay? There are fire extinguishers around here. There are fire escapes. There are fire alarms. Fire is scary, and yet there's a plan, and nobody freaks out about fire. On your way here, the only thing that prevented a horrible, horrible death were lines of paint on a road separating you from oncoming traffic. We all make risk-based decisions every day. You already have today. The difference between that and the way information security is usually portrayed is that people understand the risks. People understand fire. People understand avoiding oncoming traffic. When dealing with information security, it should be the exact same way. You should be able to measure it so that you can make just another informed business decision. It should not be about fear. It should be about measuring risk. This is the something extra that I toss in that isn't necessarily about information security. This is about communications. You don't need to be able to read all of the words on this slide. You simply need to be able to understand that there are 4 boxes on a single sheet of paper. This is something called a quad chart. This is something that, honestly, most of the federal agencies that I've worked with live and die by these things. This is how your IT group talks to whoever they report to. and has effective meetings. Take a single sheet of paper, draw 4 squares on it. Label those squares accomplishments, graphics, needs, and risks. Each square represents 5 minutes. This meeting, this status meeting, should last 20 minutes. If any one of those squares is going to go beyond 5 minutes, schedule a separate meeting. Take 5 minutes to talk about the accomplishments, what has been done in IT or information security. Take 5 minutes to go over a graphical chart, because you can put out a ton of information using either a stoplight chart or a graph. Take 5 minutes to talk about needs, to make sure that the needs of IT or whoever it is that you're speaking with are understood, and take 5 minutes to talk about risk. 20 minutes. That's all it should take. And a single sheet of paper means that you're going to be able to take that with you, you're going to be able to digest it, and you're going to be able to move on. I've worked with organizations that honestly have not had status meetings with their IT groups in 2 months, simply because they don't feel that the status meetings are productive. This is how you avoid that. So that's just something extra. It has nothing to do with an organizational image, but certainly does help communications. And now, if you have any questions, I would love to hear them, because honestly, I really enjoy talking about this topic. I'm going to sit right over here.
That's right. I'm going to let you come over and join me, Shane. And I want to thank you and our friends at Crossland this morning for making this presentation possible. I'm Pat Campbell. I lead our not-for-profit and government effort in Tennessee. And big welcome to all of you here today. This is a timely topic, and you're right, it is a little bit scary, but you tempered it and help us to realize that it's about evaluating those risks, getting a plan, communicating, and measuring, and there's always a way to mitigate those risks, though not eliminate them. So I thought we'd take a few minutes of your time this morning and let you have an opportunity to ask questions of Shane. And if I may, I'd like to have a little privilege here and ask the first question. Shane, I would think that there are a lot of nonprofits that feel like they don't have the budget to be able to deal with these issues. They seem complex, they seem costly, and just what would you say to that train of thought?
Okay. All right. So if I were dealing with, let's just pretend that we're dealing with limited resources. Let's try to imagine a world where we don't have too much money, time, and resources on our hands. If I were dealing with that situation, honestly, for my starting point, first I would, I'm not going to contradict what I just said, but first I would assemble my team and say, all right, guys, so we know that there's this problem out there. We know that information security is something we see on the news, and we would like to make the news because our nonprofit or our school or our organization is doing an outstanding job of saving the unicorns or whatever it is that we do. Not to be out there responding to Tennessee's data breach law. So I'd have the conversation of what is it that we have and what needs to be protected, and then I'd look for honestly, I'd look for free material. And information security is one of the best documented topics out there. And so if anybody in this room is sitting here going, you know, I just wish I had a starting point, and I wish I didn't have to pay a consultant to find out what that starting point was. My suggestion to you would be the SANS Institute, SANS Institute, top 20 critical controls. That is, it's not specific to any industry, but it addresses everything from access control to background investigations to network security to firewalls. It addresses a great many things, and so that's where I'd start, and it's free.
Okay, great response. And I might add, Bankside, that there are several Treasury products too that help to mitigate those risks, and having conversations with your banking team can help you to be able to have a plan in place as well.
Certainly, that having the chief financial officer in the room, he should already have that relationship with the financial institution and have that conversation that starts with, what if that should happen?
Exactly. What other questions do we have this morning?
Yes.
Okay, so I work for a nonprofit, and I'm not in the IT world. I'm the CFO of the organization. One of the risks that I see is our donor information, and our provider of our software package is moving to put that in the cloud.
Hmm.
What steps do we need to take in evaluating this new this new package that they're proposing, and what risks are associated there, if any, versus having it stored on our servers versus on a third-party servers?
Okay. So the cloud, the cloud has gone from being a dream to being the panacea that would solve all of our problems to being a horribly insecure place to store embarrassing pictures of celebrities. So when dealing with storing your information in the cloud, it's important to understand what that cloud is there for. The cloud is there to provide availability. The point of keeping things in the cloud is that should that pipe that runs over your server room break, your information is not lost. However, the security for your information is something that your organization will be held responsible for if there's a breach. So what I would initially ask is there are several organizations that deal specifically with cloud security. Actually, if you'd like, I can email you several of those organizations. But I would ask for the latest audit that was done on this provider. They should have a third-party audit that was done that covers their information security. Many times that's going to be in the form of a SOC 2 report. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with AICPA standards. I am unfortunately very familiar with them. But yeah, the AICPA SOC 2 audit is probably what I'd be asking for first. Yes.
A couple of slides mentioned backup disk being stolen or coming to the wrong hands. How would you properly store backup disk in this day and time?
Sure. So I'm actually I'm in the middle of a forensic case and have told everybody I work with repeatedly, please, if you're going to do something dumb on a computer, wipe the hard drive, because yeah, if I get a hold of a hard drive and it has not been securely overwritten, doesn't matter if you deleted something, I can still find it. In fact, that's why people hire me. But the way that if you're storing backup disks because you might need them again, now you're talking about physical storage, physical location. You would keep it safe as any other valuable asset. Lock it up in a room and restrict access to it. If you are getting rid of old computers, if something is about to leave your possession, you need to either overwrite or destroy the disks to ensure that the information is taken care of. So securely overwriting disks, you only need to overwrite them once. It used to be the DoD required 7 overwrites of a hard drive in order to consider it secure. When they made that rule, it was actually the early 80s, and technology wasn't what it is today. Inside each computer hard drive, there are platters that spin very quickly, and that's what the information is stored on. In the early 80s, those platters kind of wobbled a little bit, and so in order to deal with that wobble and the potential for offset writes, the DoD said you have to wipe it 7 times, thinking that should take care of any of the wobbling. So our hard drives don't wobble anymore. A single overwrite will deal with that and securely erase all data on a hard drive. If you're not going to overwrite it, you need to destroy it. And by destroying it, I mean either drill a hole through the hard drive or, I don't know if you have a range around here, but a .45 will work as well. But you actually have to penetrate those disks. Throwing a hard drive in a fire honestly doesn't work. hard drives are amazingly durable. Yes.
We hear all these stories after a breach happens. What is being done before the breach happens? Are we working towards any plan to come up with some solution that stops these breaches from happening?
Honestly, unfortunately, the answer to that question depends heavily on which industry you're in. If you're in a regulated industry, then due diligence is, in many cases, being forced on organizations. For example, critical infrastructure and power and utilities. Those guys, depending upon what size they are, they have to, they simply have to maintain due diligence. For any organization that accepts credit card payments, the payment card industry makes organizations conduct due diligence on a regular basis in order to continue accepting payment cards. However, just overall, where are we in protecting the internet in the United States of America? Many organizations feel it's somebody else's problem. Many organizations think that that I've actually heard the term "flying under the radar" more times than I can even count, and I have like a 3-minute sermon on that topic alone. But in many cases, smaller organizations simply don't conduct due diligence. If you are in from what I've seen, and I could certainly be wrong, but the financial organizations that I've worked with, the banks that I've worked with, if they're under $1 billion, $1.5 billion in assets, many times I will go in and find vulnerabilities within their environment because it hasn't become a priority yet. For smaller municipalities, anything outside of probably the top 5 in the state of Tennessee, most of the time I'll find vulnerabilities. For smaller commercial organizations, smaller commercial organizations almost require a breach in order to take preventative actions to stop another one from happening. I actually had lunch with the Chief Information Security Officer and the Chief Information Officer from an organization that did $2 billion worth of business last year, who still think they're flying under the radar. $2 billion with a B, and they still think they're flying under the radar. So I would love to be able to say that there's a plan in place and we'll all be covered soon, but honestly, that's not true.
I would say that there is technology, say, on the credit card side of the house, to where you see issuers of credit cards that have analytics to be able to determine if your spending patterns represent what's customary and ordinary for you. So one of you or all of you may have received a phone call to say, I noticed that you are in Naples and you booked 2 hotel rooms or whatever it may be, and that's not you. Somebody's got your credit card information. So there's technology being used to be able to pick up on abnormalities for certain products and services.
You had a chance to evaluate Apple Pay and how that might change our paradigm.
I've not had a chance to evaluate Apple Pay. However, I am familiar with the concept and implementation of near-field communications. It's the way it operates is actually similar to the way Bluetooth was supposed to operate, in that a unique identifier associated with your personal device is passed over a reader, and actually several what was it? I think it's Tiger gas stations have tried this in the past with their swipe and pay approach. This is something that I think we're going to see more often. Over in Europe, every credit card over there has a chip that does effectively the same thing in a credit card. And this is essentially taking the functionality of that chip and using digital keys instead of physical keys, which in many cases is going to be more convenient. The problem there is that the next time you lose your iPhone, you didn't just lose your phone, you may have lost your wallet as well. I'm not opposed to the technology. I think as with any technology, it needs some study. But I think the fact that Apple is doing this now is probably going to result in more of a push for people to accept it just in general. Samsung and Google actually tried this about 3 years ago, and it worked, but there weren't many places that you could go and actually use that technology to make a purchase. The fact that iPhones are selling at some incredible rate, all of those people are going to have this new iPhone and want to try that out, and so I think that it will probably result in a change in the market that will make this more common. So overall, the technology itself doesn't frighten me, but usually it's the implementation at the merchant that I would be concerned about, because you're going to have a secure. Your phone is going to maintain a secure connection with that reader, and then that reader is going to communicate back with a network that may or may not be adequately secured. So, yeah, oftentimes people don't try to break into the merchants; they'll break into credit card processing organizations because they have. Why do you break into banks? That's where the money is. Yeah, that's. But anyway, that's a really long-winded answer, but I hope I addressed your question.
A couple slides ago on the Tennessee law, you, for one reason or another, you underline unencrypted. Can you expand upon that? What's your liability? I guess there's a difference in liability whether you're encrypting that data on the stored area.
Yes. So a number of state laws don't have that word in there. Tennessee does. And that is in the definition of a breach. Tennessee's definition of a breach involves access to unencrypted information. And that's very, very important because if your information is encrypted, then it no longer meets the qualifications for Tennessee's data breach law. So that can be huge. That doesn't mean that you're good. I mean, if you suffer a breach and your information was encrypted, but it contained, say, credit card information, you still need to deal with PCI. But within the state of Tennessee, that's an important. There's a reason I underlined that. Is many states don't have that word in there, and often organizations that suffer a breach, if their information was encrypted, they can prove that whoever might have taken this information cannot access it, but they still need to report because their law said you have a breach and that counts. With regard to data breach and privacy, there is no one law that covers the United States. Every state has its own law and they vary. Most states are similar. Tennessee is representative of probably what I call the average with regard to privacy and data breach laws. Florida, if I recall correctly, is about to pass a horrendous data breach law that covers everything that, I don't know if I can go back. Yeah, so Florida covers all of this, but they also have a clause in there that says this applies to any computer system that stores an online username or password, which means that, that could be extended to mean your Facebook account. So, yeah, I think they're probably going to be really busy for the next year or so until they repeal that. But anyway, there is no national standard for privacy and data breach laws. So understand that wherever you're doing business, you need to be aware of those laws in that state. Yes?
A lot of the breaches that we've talked about are outside in. A lot of folks in the room have firewalls. Can you talk a little bit about the risks associated with internal breaches, perhaps?
Sure. So I'm going to take it on faith that people here know antivirus is important. You should have that on your computers. Antivirus works by comparing the files on your computers to signatures that it has. So it's got fingerprints of bad things, fingerprints of viruses and Trojan horses and things that you don't want on your computer. And it looks at all the files on your computer and says, all right, I don't recognize that one, so it's probably good. That one I know it's a virus. With regard to how you protect your information inside your network, two important technologies come to mind. One is intrusion detection, which works the exact same way as antivirus, except it listens to traffic on your network. An intrusion detection system listens to the traffic going across the network, compares it to signatures of known attacks, and says, hey, I recognize that one, and alerts. So it's very similar to antivirus for your network. Intrusion detection systems don't have to be expensive. One of the most commonly used intrusion detection systems is called Snort, like the pig, and it is free. You supply you supply a computer, and you can have an intrusion detection system operating this afternoon. The other term that you should remember is something called anomaly detection, and that works. That's the other side of the coin to intrusion detection. Anomaly detection is a technology that essentially watches your network traffic and assigns mathematical values to try and compute normal. So an anomaly detection appliance or piece of software, usually I tell people to let it monitor the network in a learning mode for about a month. And what it will do is just listen to your network. And then after that month or that learning time has passed, what it will do is not tell you that something is good or something is bad. It will tell you, I haven't seen that before. That's unusual. A human should look at that. And so you're not dependent upon simply having a signature for every potential bad thing. But you've got a piece of software saying that's unusual. So computer networks contain far more information than any one human or any team of humans could watch and monitor, but computers tend to be actually really good at doing that. So having anomaly detection on the network, which incidentally is what was screaming at Target, their anomaly detection systems were going off, saying, hey, the HVAC company doesn't usually get into our financial records. But yeah, anomaly detection and intrusion detection are exactly what I'd talk about.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, let's thank Shane for his presentation this morning.